Let's talk about treasure hunt and clue types. I still contend that if you're engaged in the treasure hunting world, whether you are a designer, maybe you're an educator who's making use of this structure and this genre of game in order to engage students and help them learn and stay engaged in what you're studying. Maybe you are a treasure hunt designer out in the larger world, or maybe you are a treasure hunter or participant. It's nice to take a moment and consider the different kinds of clues, since clues are not the only ingredient of a treasure hunt, but they're obviously a key part. I do have other videos on what is involved in the design of a treasure hunt, and I'm working on one that's going to be a guide for building and designing your first treasure hunt, which I believe is useful not only for designers but also for treasure hunters to take some more time and understand the structure of treasure hunts historically and in a contemporary way. So here's what I'm going to do in this video very quickly and formally. I've jotted down 10 different types of clues, although there are plenty others, so please don't be limited by these. But if you're thinking about designing your own treasure hunt, or you're trying to make sense of a treasure hunt you're in, and it's not always clear what kind of clue you're trying to discover, maybe noting these 10 that are popular will help you spot what is a clue and what is not a clue. First one, this is a pretty obvious one, riddles. It's a poetic puzzle offering indirect hints to the next step. So it might be some kind of traditional riddle like, I dry as I get wetter, pointing to a towel, right? So it's some kind of short statement, and the answer to it is a clue that you can use to progress in the treasure hunt or in the game that you're playing. So riddles are pretty common, and you'll find those. They might be hidden in little pieces of paper, especially when it's a clue chain treasure hunt. So one clue leads to another clue, leads to another clue. That's not the only type of treasure hunt, but that's one. So riddles are one. And then the second kind would then be a poem. So you could have a poem which has a series of riddles hidden within it, or it just has a poem that has a message, and the message itself is hidden. It doesn't always have to be in riddle format, but poem can be just a short limerick. It can be a longer, multiple stanzas with different stanzas leading to different stages. It could be different stanzas, the entire poem leading to a single clue. But poems are a whole nother genre, and maybe we will, or a whole nother video. We could maybe create a whole video dedicated just on poems. So I'll just note that poems are a popular one, and learning to understand the mind of the designer and how they think about the use of poetry could be pretty helpful. Puzzle pictures, a hidden image. So these are visual clues hidden within images. You might find that there's an image, but if you zoom in, you find a little bit of a clue or something that's been altered or changed. In the world of AI and image editing software that we have today, this is a tool that can be used a great deal, and it can be used in a pretty powerful way. But you might find that there's more than meets the eye. So you're looking at this picture, and if you pay attention to it, maybe it's the theme in the picture itself that's the clue. Maybe it's some kind of change or adjustment to the picture that's the clue as well. Or it's just kind of pointing you to a theme you might want to pay attention to. Then obviously we have ciphers, a written code that requires decoding via substitution or shifting. There are lots of different types, and this is actually the area that I have the least personal interest in, but those who are more mathematically minded, they really get into these ciphers and these other kinds of mathematical puzzles and the like, but they're popular, and it is part of many treasure hunts. Then we could also have clues that are delivered via some kind of language that's less known or less familiar. It could be anything from Morse code to using other languages, other known languages or more cryptic or lesser known languages. They could use zeros and ones or some kind of programming language or code, and you have to understand it or learn a little bit more about it to make sense of it. Another clue would be coordinates. So geocaching style, this is a very popular one with GPS coordinates or maps or longitude and latitude. And sometimes you might have numbers that are introduced to you in a riddle or in a poem or in other areas, and you have to put the numbers together to discover that you're actually being given some kind of coordinates or longitude, latitude of some sort. And then we have letter-shaped puzzles. These are pictograms or letter combinations where visuals replace words. So you have a kind of picture that's painted within the words. This is one that's a little less seen or known, but you'll find it out there. Then we also have single source puzzles. And single source puzzles are where you have all clues coming from a single artifact. And that could be a book, it could be a map, it could be a single poem, and it has all sorts of layered decoding within it. Now, the John Collins Black, There's Treasure Inside, I would argue that this is a treasure hunt that's largely using a single source puzzle, predominantly. That the book itself, although it contains poems and other things like that in it, but it is a single source. So everything that you need and plus a pair of boots. It's the book plus a pair of boots is everything that you need to really solve the puzzle. The next one would be immersive hunts that spread across forums, emails, phone calls, and videos. So I don't know the best term to use for this, but maybe call it a multi-platform clue. And this is common in alternate reality games, but can be used in treasure hunts as well. So maybe it's using some of the clue types that I described before, but in really simple ways. And there's a riddle, then the answer to the riddle leads you to a web page, and that web page has a phone number on it that you call, and you leave a message, or you call it, and there's a recorded message. And in that recorded message is a clue that leads you to a unlisted YouTube video, and so forth. And so you have these little clues that go across multiple platforms like that. And then there also are certainly physical challenges or props that are set up where you have to sort of navigate through some kind of physical difficulty or terrain in the physical world in order to have the clue revealed to you or released. This is popular in a lot of movies. It makes for great scenes. So, for example, in one of the National Treasure Hunt movies, in the second one, at the end, you have the main character who has to put his hand into the mouth of a stone that's shaped like an eagle. And it's a little bit scary. You put your hand in there. Is it going to get cut off? Is there a snake in there that's going to bite it or whatever? But actually inside of that stone is a lever that you pull, and that releases an opening to where the treasure is located. And so physical challenges, that one's pretty complex, but you can create some pretty simple physical challenges as well. And sometimes a physical challenge could be something like a puzzle box where you have to be able to solve the puzzle box in order to get what's inside of it, which is a clue. And so those kinds of physical challenges are pretty common. And then there are also clues that are tied to landmarks or monuments or local lore. So it might be start with one of the other clue types that I described before, but they make absolutely no sense until you get connected to the landmark, the monument, the local lore. So what might be common is maybe there's a poem that tells you about some aspect of mythology, and one of the mythological characters happens to be a name that's also the name of a local town. And that's a clue to go to that town. And when you get to the town, maybe you find that there is a art museum that has a piece of art that's reflective of one of the stanzas in the poem. You get the idea, right? So you don't know what's actually in that museum till you get there and you see it, and then you start to make the connections. Oh, wait, this painting fits with what was mentioned in the poem. And so those are 10 clues, and you can make these as simple or as complex as you want, but you put these together and you chain them together, and you can create a pretty engaging and fascinating treasure hunt, one that lasts 45 minutes or one that lasts 45 days or 45 years. You can make it as complex or as simple, as time-bound or as location-bound as you want. You could literally do almost every one of these, not all the ones that I described, by simply creating a series of envelopes with clues within it and different kinds of objects and clues within it to practice. And in fact, that's one thing that I encourage of people when I used to teach graduate courses in design principles for creating immersive learning experiences and game-based learning and so forth. I would encourage people to make their first game design one with I'd give them 10 envelopes and 10 note cards, and they had to design an immersive theme-based game experience. And again, this is a video that's not just for designers, but it's also for people who want to be treasure hunters. The more you understand the genre of the treasure hunt, the more you can be a keen observer and attentive to what's happening, and you can identify clues and hints, and the more advantage you get of some of the other treasure hunters, your fellow treasure hunters, or maybe you consider them your competitors at time as well. So that's all I have for this one. Look forward to connecting with you in future videos.